They mocked the blind girl until the waitress intervened, not knowing she was the vampire king's daughter. What no one knew, not even the waitress, was that defending royal blood triggered an ancient compact. The king's eyes found hers across the bistro. The laughter died. Her ordinary life ended. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Every subscriber brings us closer to 1,000, which helps us keep these stories alive and coming your way. Also, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far these tales travel across the world. Now, let's continue. The crystal chandelier hummed above the dining room, scattering fractured rainbows across white tablecloths and wine glasses that cost more than Lillian's weekly paycheck. The upscale bistro smelled like truffle oil, imported cigars, and the faint desperation of service workers pretending they belonged in a place that would never remember their names. She caught her reflection in the polished silver coffee pot, tired eyes, hair pinned up in a fading red bun, lipstick smudged halfway through a double shift. The kind of face people only looked at when they needed more water. It was almost 10 p.m. on a Friday, the hour when laughter from corner booths turned sharp around the edges and money started to taste like cruelty. Lillian moved between tables with automatic precision, smile, refill, disappear, counting tips in her head, praying no one sent back a plate just to prove they could. Then the door opened, and the temperature changed. A girl stepped inside, maybe 16, silver hair catching the light like spun frost, pale eyes clouded with blindness, a silver cane clutched in one hand. She moved carefully, every step deliberate, guided more by sound than sight. The conversation in the room dipped, curiosity rippling through the air. Lillian felt her stomach tighten. She'd seen that same cautious rhythm before. Her sister had walked like that after the illness took her sight. Before it took her altogether. The girl chose a booth by the window, the one everyone avoided because the streetlight outside made the glass too reflective. Lillian didn't wait to be asked. She set a glass of water down, quiet as a confession. "Menus on your left," she said softly. The girl's hand brushed the laminated edge, grateful. "Thank you." The words were careful, shaped by habit and restraint. Lillian was halfway back to the counter when the laughter started. 3 men in tailored suits, the kind who wore their privilege like armor, leaned back in their booth near the center of the room. One of them raised his phone, the red recording light blinking like a predator's eye. Another whispered something about designer eyes and charity seating. Their laughter was soft, practiced, the cruelty of people who never had to be afraid. Lillian froze. The coffee pot in her hand trembled just once. Then she was moving before her brain could tell her not to. She crossed the room in 3 strides and planted herself between them and the blind girl's table. "Delete it," she said. The man with the phone smirked. "Excuse me? She's a customer." "You're not. Delete the video and leave." His friends laughed low, derisive, masculine. "What are you, her bodyguard?" "I'm the waitress who decides if you get your check or the police." Her voice didn't rise, but it carried. The kind of calm that comes after too many nights cleaning up after cruelty. For a second, they looked like they might push it. Then the air shifted. It wasn't imagination. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. Breath misted in front of her face. The chandelier lights flickered. Someone at another table gasped. Lillian felt it, a presence pressing against her skin, heavy and ancient. From the farthest corner booth, a man rose. She hadn't noticed him before, no one had. He wore black tailored clothes that belonged to another century. His skin was pale enough to catch light like porcelain, his hair long and white as snow, his eyes ancient. Too still. Too cold. He moved like gravity bent toward him. The laughter died. The air went still, the restaurant's hum collapsing into silence. Lillian couldn't look away. He stopped a few feet from her, and even that distance felt like standing too close to a thunderstorm. When he spoke, his voice carried through the room, low and deliberate. "You defended my daughter," he said. It wasn't a question. The man with the phone made a strangled sound, something between an apology and a plea, and bolted for the door. The others followed. No one stopped them. The door's cheerful chime sounded obscene in the silence that followed. Lillian turned slowly toward the girl, toward Arya, who sat very still, one hand gripping her silver cane, the other reaching out as if searching for something. The man, Draven Ashcroft, though she didn't know his name yet, looked at Lillian. For 3 seconds, their eyes met, and the world tilted. She felt it, something shifting deep inside her, like a lock turning. Then he reached out and placed something in her palm. A coin. Silver. Warm. It pulsed once, faintly, like a heartbeat. "You have invoked the Pactus Sanguinis Protectoris," he said. "An old law. Older than this country. By defending royal blood, you are bound to it." Lillian blinked. "Bound to what?" "To her," he said simply. "My daughter. Until death or decree." Her laugh came out sharp, cracked. "I'm a waitress. I don't even have health insurance." His expression didn't change, but his eyes did. Something between pity and calculation flickered there. "Then may your courage serve where wealth cannot." He inclined his head once, turned, guided Arya toward the door. The entire restaurant watched in silence as the door closed behind them. The warmth from the coin burned hotter. Lillian opened her palm. Strange symbols glowed faintly, shifting like language written in light. The chandelier lights flickered again. Somewhere outside, an engine started. And in the reflection on the glass, she saw something impossible, everyone's reflection but his. The booth where he'd sat was empty in the mirror. Her pulse thundered. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A message from an unknown number. Just an address. No words. The next text came seconds later. 1 hour. Come alone. Lillian looked at the coin again. It glowed once, like acknowledgement. Her shift wasn't over, but her old life was. She turned the sign to closed, locked the door, and whispered to no one, "What the hell just happened?" The coin pulsed again. The air around her seemed to breathe. And outside, beyond the glass, a black car waited under the streetlight, engine idling, unseen eyes watching. Lillian tightened her fist around the coin. She didn't know it yet, but the moment she stood up for that blind girl, she stopped being invisible. And the world, both human and otherwise, had just seen her. The address glowed on Lillian's phone screen like a threat. She stood outside the closed bistro, apron still tied, coffee stains stiff against the fabric. The street was quiet except for the hum of the waiting black car parked across the road, its windows dark enough to swallow light. When she stepped closer, the passenger door unlocked without a sound. She told herself she could still walk away. She didn't. The inside of the car smelled faintly of iron and something older, like dust sealed in forgotten cathedrals. No driver spoke. No one did. The city lights blurred by, dissolving into the rain-streaked windows as the car carried her through districts she'd only ever served from behind a counter. Mansions with iron gates and names instead of numbers. Places where wealth was so dense it changed the air. The car stopped in front of one of them, an estate carved from stone and shadow, its windows burning with soft amber light. The gate opened before she could reach for it. Motion sensors, she thought, except the hinges made no sound at all. She followed the gravel path toward massive oak doors that swung inward without touch. A woman waited there, tall, severe, dressed in black that wasn't fabric so much as darkness folded into shape. She didn't introduce herself. She just said, "He's expecting you." Lillian stepped inside. The foyer was impossible, ceilings arched high enough to echo, chandeliers made of crystal and bone, mirrors in gilded frames that reflected everything except her escort's shadow. Paintings lined the walls, none of them signed, but every one of them watching. At the end of a long corridor stood Draven Ashcroft. He was no longer the man from the bistro booth, but something larger, as though the room itself bent to accommodate him. His pale hair gleamed like frost under candlelight, his posture perfect and still. "Lillian," he said, her name shaped like an invocation. "You came." She swallowed. You texted me. He inclined his head slightly, as if acknowledging her defiance. You carry my sigil. Her hand tightened around the coin. You mean this thing that won't stop burning? It recognizes its bearer. His tone was neither kind nor cruel, simply factual. The Pactus Sanguinis Protectoris is not a trinket. It is an oath, older than your species' memory. You defended my blood. The law has answered. I didn't defend anyone, she said, too fast. Someone needed help. His gaze pinned her in place. That is precisely what the compact honors. Instinct without self-interest. Compassion that risks consequence. You are now bound as Area's guardian in human spaces. The law is automatic. Irreversible. The words landed like stones. Bound, she repeated. You mean, what? Babysitter? Bodyguard? He stepped closer. The temperature dropped again. Protector. Lillian's laugh cracked in the silence. I'm a waitress, Mr. Ashcroft. I can barely protect my paycheck. The law does not concern itself with titles, he said. It sees only action. You acted. Her pulse thudded in her ears. So I just what? Lose my life because I did the right thing. He studied her the way a scholar studies an artifact, fascinated, detached. You misunderstand. The compact does not steal. It exchanges. You have my debt now. I don't want your debt. No one ever does. He reached for her hand. She flinched but didn't pull away. His touch was cold enough to hurt. The coin pulsed once and searing heat shot through her palm, bright enough to make her gasp. The smell of singed flesh filled the air. When she looked, a faint pattern had appeared on her skin, delicate, intricate, glowing red like fresh scar tissue before fading to silver. It's done, he said softly. The bond acknowledged. She stared at her hand, shaking. You branded me. I marked what already existed. He turned and began walking. She followed, because what else was there to do? The corridor opened into a vast hall lit by candelabras and lined with mirrors that reflected her from every angle. At first she thought it was just excess, then she noticed small distortions in the glass, faint movements that didn't match her own. Eyes behind the reflections, watching. Draven noticed her staring. Security, he said. The mirrors see what others miss. That's not comforting. They are not meant to comfort. He stopped before a massive desk carved from obsidian. Papers lay neatly arranged, contracts written in languages that made her head ache just to glance at. He gestured to a folder placed precisely in the center. You will find within the provisions of your new station. An apartment near Area's academy. A stipend suitable for her protection. Ministry oversight, of course. Considerate insurance. Insurance for who? She asked. His faint smile revealed nothing. Both of us. She looked at him, trying to read something human in his face. Why me? He was silent long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you acted without calculation. The court breeds predators who only protect what profits them. You defended weakness without knowing it was power. That makes you inconveniently rare. Lillian felt anger push through the fear. You make it sound like I was some experiment. His eyes flickered. Not experiment. Fulfillment. Of what? Prophecy, perhaps. Or necessity. The difference is often perspective. She stared at him. You talk like this is all just politics. He met her gaze steadily. Everything is politics, Miss Hale. Even kindness. The silence stretched between them, brittle and strange. Somewhere in the mansion, a clock ticked a small, human sound that felt wildly out of place. Finally she said, So I work for you now. You serve no one, he corrected quietly. You stand beside. That distinction will keep you alive. And if I refuse? The compact does not honor refusal. He gestured toward the far wall where a single door stood half open, warm light spilling through. Inside, Arya sat at a grand piano, her fingers tracing the keys though no sound emerged. Her sightless eyes turned slightly toward them, as if she could sense the conversation's gravity. She will depend on you in ways you cannot yet imagine, Draven said. Daylight is lethal to my kind. You will walk where we cannot. You will ensure she is safe among your people. Lillian's throat tightened. And if I fail? He looked at her, and for the first time something almost human flickered in his expression, grief, perhaps, or memory. Then the compact will choose another. But you will not fail. The law does not make mistakes. She wanted to argue, to scream, to throw the coin at his perfect marble face. Instead, she whispered, "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. "A woman who stands when others stay seated is never a stranger to me." He moved to leave, his coat whispering against the stone floor. At the doorway, he paused. "One more thing. The court will test you soon. They will want to know if you are worthy of what you've inherited. I suggest you do not underestimate them." Then he was gone, the air warming slightly in his absence. Lillian looked down at the silver coin, still glowing faintly in her hand, at the mirrored walls that watched her every breath, and at the girl beyond the doorway who turned toward her with quiet expectation. She didn't feel brave or chosen or extraordinary. She felt like a waitress standing in someone else's nightmare, holding a promise she never meant to make. But when Arya smiled faintly, uncertainly, Lillian took a step forward. The compact didn't care who she was. It only cared that she had acted. The first photo arrived before sunrise. Lillian was half asleep on her couch, still wearing her uniform, the silver coin on the coffee table pulsing faintly like a restless heartbeat. Her phone buzzed once, screen lighting the dim room. The picture showed her walking home the night before, head down, rain in her hair. A second photo followed, her unlocking her apartment door. Then a third. Her asleep, right now, from an angle that should have been impossible. She sat up so fast the blanket slid to the floor. The coin flared white in response, as if it knew. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Another text came through, just 4 words. "You are observed. Comply." She checked every corner of the room, pulled curtains, unplugged the router, even ripped the smoke detector from the ceiling. Nothing but silence and the metallic taste of fear. When the knock came, it was measured, 3 precise taps, polite in a way that made it worse. Lillian opened the door because not opening it felt useless. The woman outside looked like she'd been printed in grayscale. Gray suit, gray eyes, hair pulled into a bun so tight it might have been part of the uniform. She held up an ID embossed with a sigil that made Lillian's skin prickle. Ministry of Interdimensional Relations. Agent E. Castellan. "Miss Hale," she said, voice smooth and affectless. "May I come in?" Lillian hesitated. "Do I get a choice?" "Technically, no." Castellan stepped inside, taking up space without ever touching anything. She scanned the apartment like a scanner calibrating itself, gaze skimming walls, floor, ceiling. "You've been contacted," she said, not a question. Lillian gestured toward her phone. "If you mean the stalker slideshow, then yes. That was us." Lillian blinked. "Excuse me." "Standard initiation surveillance," Castellan said, as if discussing weather patterns. "Now that the compact has registered your bond with His Majesty's line, your activities fall under ministry oversight. Calls recorded, movements logged, associates vetted for contamination risk." "Contamination," Lillian repeated, hollow. "You make it sound like I'm diseased." Castellan's eyes flicked toward her hand, where the faint sigil still shimmered beneath the skin. "You are carrying a metaphysical pathogen, in a sense. The king's bloodline doesn't mingle without consequence." Lillian folded her arms, trying not to shake. "And you think sending me horror movie screenshots was the best way to say welcome aboard?" "The goal was not comfort," Castellan said evenly. "It was compliance." She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a folder so thick it bowed at the edges. She set it on the coffee table beside the coin. The ministry's seal gleamed on the cover, an Ouroboros biting its own tail. "This is your orientation material. You'll find your movement permissions, financial disbursement schedule, and situational protocols for Aria's guardianship." Lillian didn't touch it. "Situational protocols," she said. Like what? What to do if the vampire kid needs sunscreen? Castellan's mouth twitched, something between amusement and disdain. Like what to do if you're targeted by court assassins, or approached by royal defectors, or infected by sanguine resonance. Lillian sat back, the air seeming thinner. You people talk like this is all just normal. It is, Castellan said simply. In our jurisdiction. She opened the folder and slid out a second, slimmer file, unmarked except for a series of coded numbers. This one is for context, she said. Arya Ashcroft has been under ministry surveillance since age 7, following the incident involving her mother. Do you know about that? Lillian shook her head. Murdered, Castellan said, voice flat. Court factional dispute. Internal records list it as an act of purification. His Majesty called it treason. The truth is both. Lillian's stomach turned. She's just a kid. She's a symbol, Castellan corrected. Which is infinitely more dangerous. She tapped the folder once, nails clicking against the cover. 8 guardians before you. 8 civilian candidates. All chosen under the compact's criteria: empathy, courage, proximity to the human sphere. Each tested. Each failed. Lillian felt the words sink through her. Failed how? Castellan opened the folder. The pages were dense, typewritten reports redacted with thick black lines. Only fragments of sentences remained. Subject 03 exhibited acute psychological disintegration within 72 hours. Subject 05 breached containment, terminated per directive. Subject 07, status expunged. Her throat closed. Erased, she whispered. Officially, they never existed, Castellan said. Unofficially, they remind us the compact is impartial. It chooses, it binds, it breaks. The ministry simply observes the pattern. Lillian wanted to laugh, but it came out as a tremor. So I'm number 9. Castellan's gray eyes flicked up. For now. Lillian stood, needing distance, needing air. She crossed to the window, but outside the street was empty except for the same black car from last night. Its engine idled. Someone was definitely inside. Watching. Why tell me this? She asked. Why show me how the others ended? Transparency encourages efficiency, Castellan said. And fear encourages obedience. We require both. Lillian turned. You're unbelievable. That word implies surprise. The agent closed the file, aligning its edges precisely before slipping it back into her case. His Majesty values loyalty. The ministry values predictability. You'll learn to provide both. I didn't ask for any of this. No one does. Castellan paused at the door. But understand this, Miss Hale. By law and by blood, you're already part of it. The sooner you accept surveillance as protection, the longer you're likely to survive. She moved to leave, then hesitated, studying Lillian as if she were noting a specimen's final measurements. You defended a royal child in open daylight, she said. That level of instinct cannot be trained. It can, however, be exploited. I suggest you learn the difference before the court does. The door clicked shut behind her. Silence rushed back in, heavy and electric. Lillian stood for a long moment, staring at the folder on the table. Then she reached out, opened it. Names redacted, faces blurred, entire lives reduced to reports. The last page was blank except for a printed line near the bottom. Candidate 09, evaluation pending. Her own name beneath it, typed neatly in ministry font. The coin pulsed once, bright enough to light the room for a heartbeat. Outside, the car's engine stopped. The lights in the apartment flickered. Somewhere, unseen cameras adjusted their focus. Lillian closed the folder slowly, her reflection ghosted in the black TV screen across the room. It looked back at her, eyes too bright, expression too sharp. They were watching. Always had been. She reached for her phone, half expecting another message. The screen stayed dark for a long time, then blinked once. A new text appeared. No sender ID. Report to the Ashcroft estate at dusk. No punctuation. No signature. She set the phone face down, leaned back, and pressed both hands over her eyes. The afterimage of the photos still burned behind them, herself from every angle, every breath. For the first time she realized the truth. Whatever she had become, whatever the compact had chosen, she wasn't just living under watch. She was the experiment now. The ministry car came at dusk as promised. Lillian sat in the back seat, watching the city melt into the hills where the Ashcroft estate waited like a bruise against the horizon. The air smelled like static before a storm. She clutched the file Castellan had left her with. She'd read it 3 times, every redaction heavier than the last. Her name, Candidate 09, burned at the bottom of the page like a curse. When the gates opened, she saw him waiting. Not Draven this time, Castellan, standing at the base of the mansion steps, perfectly composed. No clipboard, no expression. The sky behind her was the color of cold iron. "Miss Hale," she said. "The king requests your presence in his study." Lillian followed her through the same halls as before, though they felt smaller now, the mirrors less like decoration and more like mouths. The footsteps echoing behind her weren't hers, she was sure of it. Draven wasn't there. Only a scent lingered, faint and metallic, like ozone and rain on steel. Castellan gestured toward a chair, then placed a new file on the desk between them. Its tab was marked Observation Log, Incident Origin. "Before we proceed," the agent said, "you should see this." Lillian opened the file with reluctant fingers. Inside were photos, grainy surveillance stills from the bistro's cameras, printed in sequence. Arya entering. The socialite seated. Lillian moving between tables, unaware. And in the far corner, barely visible, the silhouette of a man watching through a glass of untouched wine. Draven. Her stomach tightened. He was there. "Yes," Castellan said. He arranged it. Lillian looked up, disbelieving. "You're saying he set the whole thing up?" "The attack, the encounter," Castellan corrected. "Draven Ashcroft has been searching for a viable guardian for his daughter for nearly a decade. The compact chooses by instinct, but instinct can be provoked." She turned another page. Reports. Patterns. Schedules. Her own shifts listed with timestamps. Her apartment lease renewal. Her pay history. The small police report from 2 years ago, her sister's illness, the hospital debt, the quiet note about a fight Lillian had broken up in the ER waiting room. A notation beside it read, "Protective impulse confirmed." Lillian felt something cold crawl up her spine. "You've been tracking me." "The king has," Castellan said. "We simply assisted." The agent's voice didn't change, but there was a faint satisfaction beneath it, as though revealing the manipulation was another test. "You were selected based on a composite psychological profile, one designed to attract the compact's attention. Empathic, resilient, socially invisible. You were the ideal catalyst." "Catalyst," Lillian repeated, numb. "You make it sound like I'm part of a chemical reaction." "You are." Castellan flipped to the next page. It was a chart, columns of data, percentages, behavioral triggers. Lillian's name was circled in red. Beneath it, a handwritten note. The handwriting was beautiful. Sharp, deliberate, almost tender. "They will test you as they tested the others. Do not fail her as I failed her mother. D.A." Lillian read it twice before realizing she was shaking. "What does this mean?" "His Majesty carries guilt," Castellan said. "He believes his inaction cost the Queen her life. He won't repeat that mistake with his daughter." "You are his correction." She looked up sharply. "I'm not his experiment." "Everyone is his experiment," Castellan said, voice soft but sure. "Even Arya." The words hit harder than she expected. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. She remembered Arya at the piano, fingers moving soundlessly over ivory keys, the faint tremor in her voice when she'd said thank you. That wasn't staged. It couldn't have been. "He used her," Lillian whispered. "To find you," Castellan confirmed. He needed an authentic act of protection, one born from compassion rather than calculation. Only then would the compact bind. Lillian stared at the file, at the lines of her own life, dissected and rearranged into data points. So I was just bait in his experiment? Bait implies ignorance, Castellan said. You're aware now. That's progress. Lillian wanted to throw the file across the room, to shatter every mirror until something real stared back. You think this makes it better? She snapped. That he planned it? That he used people, used her, to make me feel like I had a choice. Castellan's expression didn't flicker. Choice is irrelevant. Outcome is what matters. The words lodged under her skin like splinters. She stood, pacing. You're both insane. You think just because you can manipulate the law, bend it, twist it, you get to decide who matters. Miss Hale, Castellan said calmly, we don't decide. The law does. The compact responded, because you were predictable. You always save the drowning. You did it with your sister. You did it at the bistro. You'll do it again. Lillian's breath caught. You read my sister's file. It was required for profiling. Something in her broke then. Not loudly, not visibly, just a quiet internal crack. She wasn't a data point, she said. No, Castellan replied. She was the proof. The room felt colder. The mirrors along the wall reflected fragments of her, mouth open, eyes wide, a woman splintering into versions of herself. She turned back to the file, to Draven's neat handwriting. Do not fail her as I failed her mother. For all the calculation behind it, there was sorrow in the curve of the letters, regret woven into every stroke. He's still watching, isn't he? She said quietly. Castellan's eyes flicked toward the mirrors. Always. Lillian closed the folder and pressed her hand over it. The skin beneath the sigil on her palm burned again, faintly, as if reacting to his name. She wanted to hate him. She did hate him. But the image of Arya, the blind girl smiling at her across a table, the small tremor of trust cut through everything. None of that was manipulation. That was real. And that made it worse. Castellan collected the folder and slid it back into her case. You understand now why the others failed, she said. They couldn't reconcile deceit with duty. Lillian looked up, voice low. Then maybe they didn't love the child enough. For the first time, Castellan's composure faltered, barely, but enough. Be careful with that word, she said. It's not a survival trait in this court. When the agent left, Lillian stayed seated in the silence, the mansion breathing faintly around her. She stared at her reflection in the nearest mirror. Behind her, for the briefest moment, she thought she saw him, Draven, standing in the doorway's shadow, watching. But when she turned, the space was empty. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, feeling the faint pulse beneath her skin answer back. Manipulated or not, she knew one thing: she would protect Arya. Not because he'd engineered it. Not because the law demanded it. Because someone had to. The bistro was wrong the moment she stepped inside. The air smelled of ozone and ash, not coffee and citrus oil. Chairs lay overturned. The chandeliers dripped wax instead of light. Her shoes stuck to the floor where something thick and metallic had dried. When she looked closer, the silverware on each table had melted into grotesque sculptures, spoons bent into spirals, knives fused into knots of gleaming ruin. The mirrors behind the counter were worse. Scorched symbols sprawled across the glass, curling and pulsing faintly as though alive. The language made her eyes ache just to look at it. Characters older than Latin, older than reason. And carved deep into the marble floor, the word renounce. Her hand found the coin in her pocket before she realized she'd moved. It pulsed once, a warning. She backed away slowly, heart thudding, when the black car rolled to the curb outside. Same one as before. Same tinted glass. The back door opened before she reached it. Draven's voice came through the darkness inside. Get in. She did. The ride was silent except for the sound of her pulse. When the gates of the Ashcroft estate closed behind them, she braced herself. He was waiting in the great hall, not composed, not serene, but furious in a way that cracked the air around him. Not the cold elegance of a predator, but something closer to grief wearing armor. You went back, he said. It's my job, she snapped. Or it was until someone vandalized it with ancient threats. He turned away, pacing. The court has moved sooner than expected. I miscalculated. Lillian blinked. You miscalculated? His eyes met hers, and for a second she saw it, genuine regret under centuries of control. They were to remain dormant for weeks. I thought the compact's reactivation would buy us time. Time for what? For you to understand what you've become, he said softly. For Arya to learn she was safe. Lillian let out a bitter laugh. Safe? There's a death threat carved into my floor. That was not a threat, he said. That was a directive. She felt her stomach twist. To renounce. He nodded once. To appear before the court and relinquish the bond. They want the compact dissolved publicly. Symbolically. It would preserve your life. And if I don't? He hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. Lillian crossed her arms, forcing steadiness into her voice. You want me to do it? I want you to live. By calling myself unworthy? His silence stretched, fragile and suffocating. Then, quietly, yes. She stared at him, searching for the monster she was supposed to see. Instead, she saw exhaustion, guilt, something dangerously close to care. You can't protect both of us, she said. I can try. But if I renounce, what happens to Arya? His jaw tightened. She learns the truth. What truth? That human loyalty is fleeting, he said. That compassion fades under fear. That protection is a myth. The words hit her harder than the cold. You'd let her believe that? It's better she learns it now than when it kills her. For a moment neither spoke. The air between them was full of things neither could admit, his guilt, her fear, the quiet fact that they were both bound by choices they hadn't truly made. Movement in the doorway drew her attention. Arya stood there, cane in hand, tracing invisible paths along the floor. Her face was calm, focused, but her lips moved as she whispered room counts and turn angles, memorizing her world one echo at a time. Lillian watched her, throat tight. The girl looked fragile in the candlelight, small against the vastness of the hall, but there was determination in her every movement. Draven followed her gaze. She doesn't know, he said quietly. About the message. About your choice. Lillian took a slow breath. Then she won't hear about it from me. He turned toward her sharply. You understand what you're saying? I'm saying I'm not walking away. His expression shifted, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. If you stay, they'll come for you. Let them, she said. I've spent my whole life being invisible. Maybe it's time someone saw me coming. The silence that followed felt like approval disguised as despair. Draven stepped closer, lowering his voice. This is not heroism, Lillian. It's defiance. And defiance has a price. She met his gaze without flinching. So does betrayal. For a heartbeat, something like a smile touched his mouth, small, pained, almost proud. Then it was gone. He nodded once. Then the compact stands. Lillian glanced again toward the doorway where Arya had been, but the girl had already moved on, her cane tapping softly down another corridor. When she looked back, Draven was gone too, only the faint shimmer of displaced air where he'd stood. The coin in her pocket burned hot enough to hurt. She didn't pull it out. She didn't need to. The warning had come. The choice had been made. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. Draven found her in the garden just before dawn, sitting on a cold marble bench that smelled faintly of rain and roses. The sky was colorless, the hour between night and morning when nothing quite belongs to either world. She had not slept. The word renounce still burned behind her eyelids every time she blinked. He stood without speaking for a long moment, his silhouette sharp against the fog. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than she had ever heard it. You've made your decision. Lillian didn't look at him. You already knew I would. Yes, he said. But I hoped I was wrong. Her fingers tightened around the coin she'd been turning over and over in her hands. The metal had gone cold now, a steady, heavy reminder. If I walk away, she learns people only stay when it's safe. I can't teach her that. He moved closer, the faint sound of his boots against gravel. You think staying will save her? I think it'll show her that someone tried. Draven studied her for a long time, expression unreadable. You misunderstand what this choice means. It's not loyalty they'll test, it's the shape of your endurance. They call it probatio doloris, the trial of pain. She forced a bitter smile. Sounds charming. He didn't smile back. 3 days from now, you will stand before the court. They will strip you down until only truth remains. They will use your memories, your guilt, your fears. They will find the thing you cannot bear to look at and hold it to your face until you either break or become something that cannot. Sounds like you've seen it before, she said quietly. I've presided over it, he replied. The last candidate lasted 7 hours before renouncing. She begged for death before the end. Lillian's stomach turned. And the others? One survived 3 days, he said, voice flat. She died 6 months later. Officially of unrelated causes. So no one wins. No one endures unchanged. Lillian stood, facing him. Then I'll take unchanged off the table. He looked almost human in that moment, weary and ancient all at once. There's nothing you can do to prepare. I wasn't planning to, she said. If I start trying to train for it, I'll start believing I can control it. And I can't. I just have to survive. The faintest flicker of something respect, maybe, crossed his face. That might be the only way anyone ever does. They walked back toward the mansion in silence. The sun was threatening the horizon, painting the edges of the estate in gray light. Arya was waiting at the top of the steps, dressed for school in a crisp uniform and dark glasses that caught the pale glow of morning. She was tracing her path across the flagstones with her silver cane, murmuring the rhythm of her steps under her breath. When she heard Lillian approach, she smiled. You didn't leave. Lillian swallowed hard. Didn't seem right. Arya's fingers brushed the air until they found Lillian's wrist, a small, hesitant touch. Thank you, she whispered. Draven watched from the base of the stairs, his expression unreadable again, but his eyes lingered too long to be indifferent. The court will convene in 72 hours, he said softly. Until then, you rest. You remember why you stood up in the first place. Because when they ask you that question, and you'll need the truth more than your blood. Lillian nodded, though her throat was too tight for words. She watched the Vampire King turn and vanish into the mist, leaving her alone with his daughter and the echo of his warning. 3 days. That was all. She looked at Arya, small, composed, unseeing, and thought of the 8 others who hadn't survived what was coming. Thought of her sister's sightless eyes, her laughter, her stubbornness. When Arya squeezed her wrist once more, Lillian found her voice. Whatever they do, she said softly, I'll stand. The girls smiled, and Lillian wondered if somehow she could see it anyway. The first night, she didn't sleep. The message came just after midnight, a grainy photo of her standing in the kitchen, one hand on the counter, face turned toward the window. The caption read, "The court smells blood." She dropped her phone. It clattered against the tile, screen flickering. When she picked it up again, there was another message waiting. 8 failed because they believed themselves worthy. You might survive because you know you're not. She didn't reply. There was no number to reply to, no trace of a sender. The phone hummed once, then went still. By morning, she'd stopped expecting peace. She filled the hours with motion. Research. Notes. Maps. Anything to keep her hands from shaking. The trial would take place at Glass Hall, once an opera house, now neutral ground under the Accords. A cathedral of mirrors and marble, every surface designed to reflect truth. The irony wasn't lost on her. She pulled up grainy photos of the place, vaulted ceilings, chandeliers like frozen constellations. Rumor said the mirrors were made from alchemical silver, polished in vampire blood. Whatever stood before them couldn't hide what it was. She tried to imagine herself there, small, human, insignificant. A heartbeat surrounded by predators. Every mirror she passed in the mansion seemed to tilt toward her now, reflecting not her body, but the quiet dread inside it. The second night, she opened Castellan's file again. The 8 before her. Redacted, but not enough. She read between the lines their professions, their histories, their failures. A teacher. A nurse. A soldier. Each of them had tried to prove their worth. Each had broken somewhere different. One candidate 04 had lasted 7 hours. Her transcript described her final moments in clinical detail. Subject exhibited signs of dissociation, muttering, "I am still here," until silence. Lillian closed the file. She could still hear those words like an echo in her own throat. She went to the mirror and stared at her reflection until it blurred. "I am still here," she whispered. "I am still here." By dawn, she knew what the court would use against her. Her sister. The images came without mercy: hospital corridors, the soft whir of ventilators, the white light that always felt too clean. Her sister had been 14 when she lost her sight. Lillian had promised to protect her from everything: the cruel jokes, the stares, the quiet cruelty of a world built for people who could see. Then the illness came, something small and vicious, and all Lillian had left to give were words she couldn't afford to make true. She'd stood in that sterile room, holding a hand already cooling, whispering, "I'll fix this, I swear," even as monitors went still. That was the night she learned compassion didn't always save people. Sometimes it just made their loss heavier to carry. The court would find that weakness. They'd peel it open like a wound and watch her bleed. She closed the file and pushed it away. There was no training for this. No mantras, no strategy. Draven had said the trial revealed what you were when everything else was stripped away. Maybe the only weapon she had was knowing she didn't have one. That evening, she walked the mansion halls until she found herself outside Aria's room. The girl's laughter drifted through the cracked door, soft, real. A music lesson. She was playing something delicate on the piano, hesitant but beautiful. Lillian leaned against the wall, listening. The melody trembled, then steadied. For a moment, she let herself believe it was enough to stand here, breathing, waiting, knowing what was coming. Her phone vibrated again. Another photo. Her face half lit by candlelight, taken from over her shoulder. No caption this time. Just silence. She turned the phone face down and didn't look again. There were 72 hours left. The mirrors of Glass Hall were waiting. She would show up. She would stand. She would not break. The sky burned red as she reached Glass Hall. The old opera house loomed like a cathedral built to worship reflection, arched windows black with age, glass doors polished to a predatory gleam. The courtyard smelled of whetstone and iron. Inside, the light fractured endlessly, mirrors layered upon mirrors, each one catching a different version of her face. She looked like a crowd of ghosts. Her footsteps echoed as she walked toward the center of the chamber. Gothic chandeliers hung like frozen stars, each prism scattering blood-colored light across marble and silver. The audience was already assembled, 30 figures in the gallery seats, motionless as statues. Vampire nobility in shadowed finery, ministry officials with their tablets and perfect composure, and others, betters, thrill-seekers, waiting to see if the human girl would survive. She didn't look at them. Her eyes found Aria instead. The girl sat in the front row, crimson dress vivid against the dark stone. Her pale eyes caught the light, glowing faintly like frost. She was trying to sit still, hands folded tight in her lap, but her knuckles trembled. Draven sat beside her, rigid, expression carved from restraint. His fingers were white around the armrest. He met Lillian's gaze once, a flicker of apology crossing his face. It vanished before it could become comfort. At the center of the hall waited 3 elders, robed in ceremonial white, faces half obscured by veils stitched with silver thread. They stood in a ring of light so bright it seemed to burn the air. Around them, 3 concentric circles had been drawn on the marble floor, salt on the outer edge, Iron in the middle, crushed obsidian within. Purification. Binding. Blindness. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. She would be stripped, tethered, made to see nothing, just like Arya, learning to navigate a world that didn't care if she stumbled. "Lillian Hale," said the lead elder. Her voice carried effortlessly, neither cruel nor kind, merely absolute. "You stand bound by the Pactus Sanguinis Protectoris. Do you enter freely, understanding there is no appeal?" Lillian's throat felt tight. "I enter. Remove all metal. All protection." She obeyed, setting her rings, watch, and the coin itself onto the stone step beside the circle. The coin vibrated once, as if alive, then fell silent. Step within. The salt crunched underfoot. The iron circle hummed faintly, the air growing heavier. When she crossed the final ring of obsidian, sound itself seemed to dim. Her vision wavered. The mirrors that lined the hall blurred, and every reflection of her blinked out one by one until only black glass remained. The elder extended a hand toward the iron rail at the circle's center. "Grip it. It will anchor you to the world while we peel it away." Lillian reached out. The metal burned like frostbite, but she held on. The elder's voice filled the silence. "The court will see you as you are. Speak only truth. Lie, and the circle will correct you. Resist, and it will remember your defiance." She nodded once, jaw tight. The temperature dropped again. Her breath came out in white ribbons. The elder's tone changed, no longer ceremonial, but intimate, sharp as a knife. "Tell us, Lillian Hale, why did you protect the child?" The mirrors flickered. Shadows moved within them, shapes, faces, echoes. "Because she needed help," Lillian said. "Help," murmured the elder. "Or absolution?" Something in the mirrors shifted. For a moment, she saw her sister there, standing barefoot in the hospital corridor, eyes blind and smiling faintly. The sound of monitors filled the air, the smell of antiseptic cutting through stone. Lillian's grip tightened. "I did what anyone would have." The mirrors rippled. Her sister's voice whispered, "You didn't stay." The iron rail burned hotter. Arya gasped from the gallery. Draven started to rise, but another elder extended a hand, and he froze where he was. Lillian kept her eyes open. The mirrors swirled with images, her failures, her promises, every mercy that had turned to regret. The elder in white stepped closer. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. "We have not yet begun to take." The light fractured. The mirrors screamed. The temperature plunged until the air itself broke apart like glass. And Lillian stood there, hands locked around the rail, staring into the dark reflections of herself, refusing to look away. Time dissolved. 3 hours. 6. Maybe longer. The mirrors had stopped reflecting her face. Now they showed only fragments, a trembling hand, a half-closed eye, the steam of her breath hanging like ghost light. The elders circled her in silence before the next voice broke through. "You were there when she went blind," said the woman in white. "You watched the world fade for her, and you did nothing." Lillian's hands clenched around the iron rail. The metal burned cold, biting into her palms. "You worked double shifts," another voice murmured, male, smooth as oil. "But you couldn't afford treatment. Couldn't even keep the lights on. You promised to protect her. Tell us, where were you when she died?" The mirrors shimmered, and the hospital reappeared, the too bright room, the hum of machines. She could smell antiseptic and burnt coffee. Her sister's hand slipping out of hers as a nurse whispered condolences she couldn't afford to hear. The voice pressed closer. "You were serving coffee to people who never learned your name." Lillian's throat tightened. The iron hissed under her skin, frost fusing to flesh. "Stop." The third elder spoke then, voice low, almost kind. "You're a waitress. You serve. You clean up after your betters. What makes you think you can protect royalty?" The mirrors rippled. She saw herself in uniform, apron stained, smile practiced. Always invisible. Always replaceable. She forced a breath. "Because no one else will." The lead elder tilted her head. No one else will? Or because you need to matter to someone who can't see you fail? The room seemed to shrink. Her pulse pounded in her teeth. You couldn't save your sister with money, the elder went on. Now you think you can save the blind girl with what determination? Love? The court does not accept payment in good intentions. Lillian wanted to let go, to fall to her knees, but her fingers refused to release the rail. Blood trickled down her wrists, freezing before it hit the marble. They asked again. Again. And every time they tried to take something from her, she gave the same answer. I'm here because she couldn't see them coming. The elder's voice sliced through the air. What did you say? Lillian lifted her head. I'm here because she couldn't see them coming. The mirrors pulsed. Her reflection multiplied, whispering it back in a dozen fractured echoes. They pressed harder, voices like knives. Say it again. I'm here because she couldn't see them coming. Her lips cracked. Her voice broke. But she kept saying it. 13 times. Each repetition steadier than the last. On the 13th, the lead elder stepped forward. The light dimmed, the cold retreated. Her expression didn't soften, but her eyes, ancient and pitiless, narrowed in what might have been acknowledgement. Sufficient, she said. The words struck like a gavel. The circles went still. The air lifted its weight. Lillian's knees buckled, but she didn't fall. The iron rail slipped from her bleeding hands, and the mirrors finally reflected her again, one single figure, standing, shaking, but upright. Barely adequate, but alive. When the iron circle released her, her body gave out. The mirrors went dark, the world lost its edges, and she felt herself falling. Draven moved before anyone else did, crossing the space in a single impossible motion. He caught her just before she hit the marble. His hands were cool against her fevered skin, steadying her, lowering her gently to the floor. The salt ring broke under his boots, scattering like dust. Her palms were shredded, ribbons of red and white. He tore a strip from his sleeve, but Arya was already there, her small hands trembling as she pressed a square of silk into his. He took it, wrapped her wounds with quiet precision. His movements were careful, reverent, as though he were repairing something sacred. Arya's voice came out fractured, full of breath and tears. Thank you. Lillian blinked through the blur. The girl's face was wet, her lips trembling. She was gripping Lillian's arm like an anchor. Hey, Lillian whispered. Her throat hurt. It's okay. I'm here. The lead elder approached, robes whispering against the marble. She knelt, her face close enough that Lillian could see the faint reflection of herself in the elder's silver-threaded veil. The woman's voice was low, almost intimate. You survived the first trial because you're nothing, she said. The second will test whether nothing can become something. Most can't. Then she was gone, moving back into the circle of light. The ceremony ended with a single gesture. The vampires rose as one, murmuring, filing out. Draven lifted Lillian to her feet. Outside, the night air hit her lungs like water after drought. The scent of rain and iron filled her senses. Somewhere behind them, glass hall sealed itself shut, mirrors turning black. Draven didn't speak until they reached the car. He handed her a small iron key. An apartment near area school. Paid in full. She turned it over in her blood-stained fingers. So the stipend's real. He nodded once. And my blood debt. But don't mistake it for a gift. She laughed thin, cracked, the sound of a woman who had run out of fear. I figured that out. He didn't smile. You're bound to the bloodline now. Every faction will know your name by sunrise. Some will call you lucky. Most will call you bait. Let them. She leaned back against the car door, eyes half closed. At least they'll see me. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A new message, no number. The first trial proves you bleed. The second proves whether you can still stand after. Welcome to visibility. She stared at the screen for a long time before sliding it away. The words didn't frighten her. Not anymore. Draven watched her, expression unreadable. "You shouldn't take pride in surviving," he said quietly. "I'm not," she said. "I'm taking inventory." He almost smiled then, something ghost-like, gone before it reached his eyes. Back at the mansion, Arya was waiting. When she heard Lillian's footsteps, she rose from the couch, cane tapping once against the floor. "You came back," she said softly. Lillian flexed her bandaged hands. They throbbed with every heartbeat, but they were still hers. "I said I would." Arya nodded, relief trembling in her voice. "Then we're both still here." Lillian managed to smile. "For now." She looked down at her ruined palms, white silk stained red, the word sufficient still echoing in her mind. In the language of predators, it meant barely enough. In hers, it meant survivor. And that, she decided, was enough to begin again. If you love this story, please give it a like and share it with anyone who enjoys vampire romance, gothic fairy tales, or powerful family stories. Subscribe to our channel for more epic tales like this.